Alrighty, hi all. So we are back at the Pink, and it's Lord of War 2. In between the two Lords of War, the Dark Eldar dropped, and I'd been playing a lot of Dark Eldar, a lot of different lists. And because I knew from the first Lords of War that the terrain is much more suited now for 8th, there's lots of line of sight blocking, got a bit of impassable, things like that. I decided to go with the Talos heavy list, just because now Taloses have fly. When the book first dropped it didn't, but they quickly FAQ'd that. And so you can get around the table pretty easily. Talos themselves are pretty damn strong. And the missions for this event were a little bit funky. I'll have them in the list. They're probably up right now, but you had to kind of like pick a secondary, and you could only ever use that once. Then you'd have to pick 2 tertiaries and pick that once, and then it would be primary, secondary, tertiary, and that would make up your 20. So because of all this thing, I thought the Taloses would be the strongest pick, and that's pretty much why I went the list I've done. Alright, round 1, Lords of War 2, versing my friend Nick Standing. Take us through your list, man.
I got the Primaris Ultramarines.
As always.
Yeah, Big Bobby G, the bad boy himself. Bike captain, all kitted out. I got Tiggy and a banner hiding under here with the ancient. I got 5 aggressors. I got 10 and 5 hellblasters. Then I have 3 lots of 10 intercessors.
Excellent. And I've just deployed. I've got some racks and Homunculus over here. All of the Taloses, planes, some more racks, and in reserve, Mandrakes and Ravagers. Alrighty. And so, getting into the game, I'm versing Nick Standing, another Team Godhammer compatriot, and he's playing his Primaris Marines. And the main thing I wanted to get rid of against him was the Hellblasters. So the rest of the stuff is painful, but the Hellblasters, along with the banner, is the stuff that I really need to get rid of. As well as I think they're called aggressors, the fast-moving dudes with lots of DACA. So those are the 2 primary targets. Everything else is secondary. Bobby G is going to hurt, and as we see, I think in turn 2 or turn 3, he kills an entire unit of Talos pretty much by himself. So very painful, but I can't, I can't waste all my shots at him just to try and take him out. I just have to accept it and try and kill everything else that supports Bobby G. Yeah, so that's pretty much the game plan here. My game plan is protect, deploy out of range from his guns, make him move up to the middle of the table as much as possible, while I then use my range of all my guns, because I outrange him. I've got 36-inch range, disintegrator cannons and crap like that. And just kind of nudge, get into good positions, use line of sight blocking, pepper here, pepper there, and eventually I'll get to a spot where I can then kind of pounce. So he has his first turn, doesn't really do that much. My first turn, I fly in, I drop my Ravagers in my deployment zone, and I kill all the aggressors, and I use my planes to shoot a couple of what they call, they're the Primaris heavy support. And so my first turn I was quite happy with. I killed a couple of those heavy support dudes and all the aggressors, and peppered just a couple of Primaris Marines. But my main priority for my turn 1 was good. And so when you're watching these games, this is the thing I love about Timelapse and the way I present these things to you guys. The best bit of it is you can just see the positioning of the models. You can see the positioning of the objectives. You can kind of see how the army's moving, and that's pretty much where the 40k, where you win or lose in games of 40k. It's in the movement phase. It's where you choose to stick your head out versus not stick your head out. I think Nick was this is not a good matchup for Nick, because when you have this many disintegrator cannons with reroll 1s to hit and to wound, and they're killing Primaris Marines outright because they're 2 damage each, it's definitely a hard matchup for him. But I think in our conversations, if he had pushed a bit more aggressively in the center, or deployed more in the center and pushed up, it possibly would have worked out a bit better for him. It just meant I could play around his distance as opposed to him being able to be more aggressive with me. One of the things here, I shoot off. These are the good things about these jet fighters. In other iterations of this list, I've actually removed them. But the one good thing about them is they're like a surprise snipe. So he has his banner on the ground floor of that ruin. And because of the way targeting works, I actually flew my plane over. Now the banner is the closest model to my plane. And I shoot, in essence, everything at the banner. Nick, I can't remember, he did something that made it so it was either hard to hit or didn't. I didn't kill the banner. He was on one wound. There was some sort of ability. I'm sure it was, or I rolled terribly. But the concept's there, and that's the thing about the planes. When you've got 60-inch movement, if you ever see just, oh, there's a character that's really important, just hanging in the wind, dive him. You're rarely punished for it, other than shooting, and then you can use the 2CP to kind of go neg-2 to hit. And then if they're doing that, your rest of your army, your Taloses and everything can push up, get really threatening, holding all the objectives. Your racks are just nudging left and right. So you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, I've got a unit of racks just slowly moving around. There's an objective right in the bottom left corner, and getting ready. So there's objective 4, bottom left. If I ever have to score objective 4, I can just move and run to get onto that one. You get the idea. You're just nudging it. You're not, for the way I'm using racks in this army, you're using them as a just in case, preventing deep strikes, things like that. You'll see that in the next few games. Whereas the rest of it, you're trying to get your Taloses to be as threatening as possible. If they're hurt too much before they get into position, then they don't become that threatening. And if they're caught out, like if you can be what's it called? If it's just like one unit gets caught and it doesn't have the backup of the other 2 units, again, not as threatening. 3 units of Taloses, threatening. 1 unit of Taloses, it can be dealt with. Pretty much the rest of this turn and most of the rest of the game is now centered in the middle. We've just got this big shit show of Primaris Marines and Gilliman and Tiggy, just everyone punching up in the middle. I do use the 2CP to interrupt to do some punches with one of my units of Talos. Nick made a few little mistakes here with activation, just because Gilliman's base is really big, and when he was doing his charges and pylons, and you can see his captain on bike at the back, because he blocked himself from charges, even though he rolled enough to make a charge, he was just too far out. Like there was no kind of way in, and so he kind of blocked himself a little bit there. Finally, that combat finished. I lost, I think, 1.5 units of Talos. I then fly out. This is the benefit of having fly. I jump out. I kill a bunch of more Primaris Marines. Gilman goes off to kill a boat, but that's the end of the game.
Alrighty, game 2 in Lords of War. People, I'm versing Stacey Dennis. I haven't played him in about 15 years. He's playing Tyranids, lots of warriors, and Dragon Prime, Behemoth Drop, and then Kraken. All miscellaneous dudes. Bit of everything. We're playing table quarters. Alright.
So, playing Stacy, and I haven't played him for a very, very long time. I used to play against him when I was much younger at the Blind Pig, and when I was getting back into the game, I watched pretty much most of his games at Quartermaster. I would just go to the Quartermaster as an observer and just sit next to his table and just really watch and understand how he goes. For how Stacey's army works is it's a lot of reserves. You've got a big hit on turn 2. So he's playing big drops of warriors coming in. Trigon, not Trigon Primes, but just Trigons. Trigons popping up. Warriors there. Everyone gets reroll charge because they're Behemoth. Spending all your CP on double shooting, double attacks, all that type of stuff. So he's got lots and lots of CP. And because of that, I'm really my game plan is just to bubble out as much as possible, protect my backfield, because I do not want to deal with that on like 2 fronts. I don't want to have to deal with one army on one side and the other army on the other. And that's pretty much how I'm deploying and moving you. Hopefully I remember to move the camera just a little bit up, just so you can see the rest of my kind of bubbling. And just in the beginning when I was deploying, I just deployed my army because Stacey was still fluffing about with his army, and so I just deployed because it really wouldn't have mattered how I was going to be deploying based on what he was doing. And he had like 4 or 5 reserve things, so I just went, alright, cool. I just started dropping some stuff down. Yeah, so my game plan, I made a small little tactical mistake here. The left hand side Rax unit is actually half an inch out of my homunculus, so only toughness 4 rather than toughness 5. That was just a little mistake. It kind of comes into play, but it's not a big deal. Everything else I think was done quite well. Top left hand corner, I've got a unit of Rax there protecting all the 9-inch bubble. You can see what Stacey was just measuring then. And so the Rippers, he's got like a unit of 9 Rippers. They can only drop in the top right hand corner. It's off the screen. You can see it kind of up there. And that to me was a win. Once I knew he could only drop in, you know, a unit of Rippers, or he would be completely out of position in essence. And then the rest of his army would be dropping with the rest of his army. So that all the Behemoth guys popping up next to the Kraken, I could then deal with it. You know, I wouldn't have to be trying to split the Taloses. Now, if you remember the last game, I talk about Taloses. They're threatening if they're next to each other, if they're at full strength as much as possible. You know, like if you're preserving them and they have support, then they're very threatening. If you're splitting them apart, if they're away, especially from Urian, etc., they can then be dealt with and they're much less threatening. Anyway, so his turn 2 drop, big hit. I really like the 9 warriors with the double shooting, and when they got 3 venom cannons and death spitters and all that type of stuff, that I really did like that. I thought it was really cool. Then so he made 2 charges, but Stacey made a little bit of a mistake in his activations, in how he activated. The Trigon Prime, I think, killed 2 Talos. I can't remember exactly. We'll see in a second. But it killed enough so that if he activated in the wrong order, I would pull and kill all those Trigons, and one of his units of warriors wouldn't actually get to swing. Now, because Stacey's just getting back into 8th, we spent probably about 10 minutes here explaining how combat, kind of like how combat works, and like how if you want to charge somebody, here's me kind of explaining it, you know, if you want to swing at someone, you have to declare a charge on them, and how you have to do pile-ins and consolidate and all that type of stuff. Just because in his first game he was a bit confused about how to do it, and so I had to spend a bit of time explaining it in this game. And even though he didn't declare on one of my guys, and so I heroic intervention, he said, "Oh, we talked about it," and you know, I let him take it back, and I said, "Okay, so I won't heroic intervention then because you've declared on me," etc. This turn in particular, because it's his big turn 2, and as you guys know, if you've watched, I played Tyranids before, I played Beta Strike. I know how long the turn 2 can get, but it took about an hour and 1 minute, I think we wrote it down. You can see in the bottom, I'm kind of keeping track of time. And I wanted to make sure we got a 3rd turn, because Tyranids against Dark Eldar, and I've played this match a million times, both as Tyranid as Dark Eldar. It doesn't get better for the Tyranids. As the game goes longer, it only gets worse. And so I really needed to have a third turn, because this is only turn 2. And so at the bottom of turn 2, so at the top of my turn, but I was going second, I said I'm going to get my turn done, and then we're going to split the time. This is the one little bit of contentious issue that we had. So after I had my turn 2, we only had 15 minutes left. I called the TO over. I mentioned, I told them the situation. I said we're going to split the time. We'll go 7 minutes each. We got 1 minute of fat, and the TO agreed. Stacey agreed, and so we played it out. So I had my second turn. I did quite a lot of shooting. I'm focusing primarily on all the warriors, trying to kill all the warriors. I'm ignoring the big monsters because I can kind of deal with them. They're a bit more luck based than the warriors. Warriors have a shit ton of attacks, whereas while Trigon Primes have a lot of attacks, if you get a little unlucky with the rolls, it's more damaging. I'm probably explaining that well, but just it's more swingy rather than more consistent damage. Which is why I like disintegrator cannons over dark lancers. I'm also trying to hunt with my planes. I'm hunting characters and Bibles and things like that. His turn 2, he focuses on killing things such as the Taloses and my character. Unfortunately, he didn't get to kill my character. Like he swung, I got my character down to 1 wound, but he'd already taken 8 minutes of his allotted 7 minutes, and throughout the time, like I was mentioning, got 3 minutes left, okay, this is your last action, etc. He wanted to spend, I think it was 3 CP to swing again. I told him no, in essence, because of the agreement we had, and he was a little bit upset at that, but I believe I was quite fair, and I did everything I could to be as transparent as possible.
Alright, I'm not going to try and see, so game 3, I'm versing Sheldon. I have not played him before, but he is running 3 knights of various things, and where's the other guy?
3 shield captains.
Ah, they're all hiding back there.
Yes, they are.
Excellent. And here's me hiding over here, and some stuff in reserve.
So game 3 and versing Sheldon. So Sheldon's actually the brother of the TO, Josh, and this was a really fun game. One, because Sheldon's a really great guy, but also because I had quite good luck. And whenever you have good luck and like things just are working for you, but your opponent is taking it with good graces, it's always a fun time. This list was very, I think, identical to the one Justin Murphy ran against me in Lord of War 1. So I had a pretty good idea of how it was going to run. However, Sheldon, he got a few of his rules wrong to his detriment. So not like in terms of gameplay, but he didn't realize that all the shield captains start as 4-up invo. And so one of his shield captains was 5-up invo, and that's how we played it. And I was always interested. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder how they get 4-up. I'm not 100% au fait with shield captains, other than you try not to let them hit you. And also, shield captains are toughness 6, not toughness 5, as Sheldon told me they were. So he did after this game. He did definitely learn that, and I think he won the next game, which is very good. But yeah, he dives his shield captains up in the middle of the table, turn 1, killed a few things here and there. I then dropped in my Ravagers and killed 2 shield captains. I was ready for a charge as well, but they both died, and so I was like, okay, I can't charge. Then Sheldon ran his last shield captain behind his knight and said, oh, all right, well, that didn't work. His next turn... after turn 1, he made the decision that he was just trying to get his secondaries or tertiaries, like just get as many as he could, because he believed he'd probably be losing the primary, and so he was just targeting both of the planes, because he had picked, I think one of the secondaries or one of the tertiaries would pick like a slot, and he picked the flyers. So he's pretty much his entire game plan was just kill flyers, and so because I knew that, I was spending 2 CP to go neg 1 to like a neg additional 1 to hit on the flyers. And knights, even when you have 3 knights, they still do find it hard to kill planes with neg 2 to hit and 5 up invos. I'm pushing forward. I really like the haywire grenade launchers on the Taloses. I think that's the best choice for them. The other ones don't even get a look in for me, because they're assaults. You can shoot after your advance, which you generally are advancing, and they help deal with the heavy armor that your army doesn't have if you only go disintegrator cannons. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I kill one of the knights through shooting. I kill the other knight through shooting and charges. And then we get down to the last portion where there's 1 knight, 1 shield captain left. Sheldon gets his flyer kill, and we call it there just because he's about to be tabled. But to me, it was just a generally fun game to play.
Round 4, versing my friend Kevin, and he's running a very mixed Dark Eldar list. Originated from Ben Clark, and then I've made tweaks over it, and then Kevin loved it and stole all for himself. Is that right? Is that how it worked? Yes. Excellent. So we got lots of grotesques, lots and lots of racks, ravages, and then in reserve 20 witches and 3 units of 10 mandrakes. That's it. And I saw a broken model there. That's all good. I'll just ignore it. And I've got some guys here in the corner. All my Taloses and some planes. And I put my guys in reserve.
Alright, so last game of the tournament. We're playing for first place from a battle point of view, so we're both on top points. And yeah, Dark Eldar, there's 2 Dark Eldar, both smashing it. As I mentioned before, so this list that Kevin's running is one that I was playing around with for about a month. I got the original idea from Ben Clark, who's part of the ETC team down in Victoria. I was running something different against him, and then he whips his list out, and I'm like, I love it. I really like grotesques. And any other type of tournament, so not this particular tournament, I would be running grotesques. However, I just felt the amount of kind of terrain that there was going to be on the table. I knew Taloses were probably a little bit of a better choice. Now this game was a slugfest, or punchfest, whatever, because Kevin's army is very hard to shift. And it pretty much ignores toughness. Like, it's everything in his army. He's got some sort of poison, like awesome factors. They're winning on 2s. It doesn't matter if you're toughness 7 or whatever. And so because of that, and all the racks, poison weapons, all the fun things. So my toughness, my kind of toughness of the Taloses, is kind of ignored. And so Dark Eldar are, and this is something I noticed in a lot of playtests, Dark Eldar are great at versing Dark Eldar. That's pretty much it. And so, you know, Venom Span, for example, is really strong against this type of army that I'm running, or even conversely the other type of army where I ran Venom Spam against Kevin's army, and it's a very hard matchup for him. So vehicle spam is definitely a good thing to run if you're versing high toughness, hard to kill things. We've got me again, just jostling for position, hanging around in the center, and I'm kind of holding back my Ravagers. I didn't actually need to as we're going through the game. So we both made a few little mistakes here and there. I kind of husband, I think that's the right word, my Ravagers, because I was worried about him shooting his Ravagers into him and kind of taking him out. But Ravagers aren't that good, if they're not Dark Lancers, they're not that good at killing other Ravagers. Because you're wounding on 5s, And yeah, it just, you know, 4-up invo, winning on 5s, you're probably not going to actually kill the Ravager. And so I could have brought them in earlier. I could and slash should have put my Archon a bit back. I put them up behind that building thinking I'd be a bit more aggressive, but then I remembered that Kevin's army is actually more aggressive than mine. I have a central kind of army with the Taloses. I'm a bit more of a bully in the center, but I'm not that aggressive. This is more of a, I'll call it kind of like a defensive Dark Eldar list. Yeah, so one of the like tech choices that I like throwing in with any Dark Eldar list, and I've made changes to my list already, like this Talos list, to include this, just succubuses with Shardnet and Paler. Those girls, they get just, and then when you give them 2+2 movement, so they're moving 10 inches, they can advance because they're part of Red Grief and still charge, and they get into some unit in the back line and then you can't fall back from it. Oh my god, it annoys the crap out of everybody, including me. Like, it happened, I couldn't fall back with a unit of Rax against that succubus, and because I got no psychic powers, I can't knock her out through smites and things like that. And so it just means that it becomes really, really difficult for to shift those like models, and that kind of locks in portions of the army. One of the things I was very conscious of, and I think I did quite well, and you can see where my racks were his mandrakes, where he was going to land his mandrakes, making sure that, you know, I'd be targeting the mandrakes first. As soon as they dropped, that is my priority target, because they hurt like crap. And making it so he can't drop behind me. So, you know, I'm spreading out all my racks in the backfield, dropping my vehicles, making it just so he has to be on his side of the table. Once his mandrakes drop, I then push forward with my dudes. But then the great thing about Prophets of Flesh, and I love running 10 units of 10 racks, fully upgraded. You spend 2 CP, even if you're down to 1 model, which is exactly what happened. There was 1 rack left. You regenerate the entire unit and you teleport to anywhere on the board within 6 inches of an edge, which is what Kevin did. He regenerated 9 guys, teleported to the bottom bottom right hand corner, sorry, and was 9 inches away from my unit of racks. And because he's re-rolling charges, because, you know, it's now like turn 3 and Dark Eldar have natural re-roll charges from turn 2. You're shooting, you're killing a couple, then you're charging, and then, oh, it is the best thing I can think of. So yeah, changes to my list. I've dropped the 2 planes, and the unit of 5 mandrakes, and I bumped up my unit of 5 racks to 10, and gave them awesome factors and all that type of stuff. So that's I think that's like the 1850 point list. The 2000 point list also adds in 3 succubuses. And yeah, I really love Dark Eldar. I think it's awesome. Unfortunately, we only got to turn 3, and so I got up by only a few points. Like, it wasn't a huge win to me, I don't believe. However, if we'd kept on going, I think it was kind of swinging in my favor. My Taloses were kind of surrounding all of his characters. I just killed Urian. And so it was starting to look a little bit grim for Kevin. However, he was not out of the fight completely. So I really wanted to finish that game, but unfortunately we just ran out of time. So overall, I won Best General, but there was a heavy paint composition portion of it. And so best overall went to Bevan and his really nicely painted guard army. So he was doing well in the tournament, but then his paint made him best overall.